Is this psychology anecdote true, and if so, what is this phenomenon called? If you've ever worked with children, it's actually pretty cool, but frustrating to see this in action. Children of a certain age expect you to know their thoughts or experiences. I once had a student get mad at me because I couldn't remember the dream he had last night, which he never told me about. Hahaha. Haven't heard of this, but am a little confused about the anecdote. Does the woman hear the boy say that there's a key underneath the bowl? Because if so, it seems like the boy could conclude that the woman knows there's a key because she just heard him say so. Theory of mind test. It's a developmental psych thing and was at one point used to help screen for autism. Y'all ever read Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime? There's a similar test the protagonist takes in that, only it's a pencil and a mini MMS tube. Dunno if they do that anymore. My husband is autistic and never did a test like that, but he was DXD when he was like 19-20. From what I've heard, it's evolutionary prejudice. We assume of others what we ourselves know. From doctors most often. I've heard it happens with food specifically. We always assume that if we don't like a food, that food as a whole is unlikable. For example, Reddit has many polls asking questions such as what foods are you convinced nobody likes, or what foods are people lying about liking. In most scenarios the behavior is soothed as people learn to be more open-minded, but it never really goes away. Egocentrism, a lack of awareness of another's perspective. The simple example I remember is that two kids are facing each other. A and B ask A what they see, they answer. B ask A what B sees, they say B again. I remember reading about some famous child psychologist named Jean Piaget who thought kids were solipsistic for the first year or so of their lives, but not by the time they can stand and speak. And like the top comment said, this is called theory of mind. The ability to recognize that others have their own unique and subjective experiences and perceptions of the world. A solipsist is someone who doesn't have the ability to recognize others' realness as people. However, I think solipsism was actually conceptualized as a joke. I'm not too sure. Many people seriously doubt solipsism can actually be real. A few side notes here. Solipsism has three philosophical forms. Metaphysical, where the person believes they are basically a god or something, thinking others don't truly exist and are imaginary. Epistemological, where you're basically agnostic about it, you don't know whether or not others exist. Then there's the methodological form. Basically brains in vats being controlled by a mad scientist forcing people to live in a simulation. Then there's solipsism syndrome, where they are truly solipsistic, but not due to a philosophical belief, but rather due to a brain injury. Adding to what others said about theory of mind, this specific setup is called the false belief task. With that name you can find tons of studies doing versions of it with kids of many age ranges. I'm not sure it has a name as such. It's something like theory of mind. Yes, this is an issue brought up, not so much in psychology, but in animal cognition. I'm not sure we've developed any reliable way to test it with kids at a young enough age that they fail. But the fact that humans are practically the only animals capable of passing the test at any age is interesting and tells us something about the difference between human and animal brains. Seems no one yet has correctly identified this as the Salian tests: n.m. Wikipedia.org. Wikisally E28093 Anitas.